a wonderful place existed.
The Athenians called it the Acropolis. Free expression, ethics, art, philosophy. The Acropolis heralded the democracy. But if I told you the Acropolis has returned. Acropolis News. News from the Acropolis.
Well, it finally happened. It finally got to a point in this country where things have bifurcated to the point where the broader country as a whole now reflects everyone's attitudes. On one side, you have people who believe that one's skin color is tantamount to one's ethic. Also, if you have the incorrect skin color, then that lack of ethic part of proper. I'm talking, of course, here to critical race theory and queer theory and what you would call, broadly speaking, wokeness. And if you read into the things that they believe, you will find that they only believe things in terms of power relations. And in order to justify what they believe, they make things up and then claim that the things that they make up is real, more or less. And then you have the lessers in society, as it were, who are an assortment of people who have the correct skin color or the incorrect skin color, etc. And they believe the exact opposite. It's a sort of a loose collection of people on the left, on the right, and they more or less believe in the principles of the Republic, and they're not trying to destroy the Republic. They haven't really engaged in any pillaging of the Republic, unlike their betters, but they're the insurrectionists. They don't really believe in racial consciousness, unlike their betters, but they are the racists. And it just kind of gets to a point where you just have to realize, and forgive me for being hyperbolic, but does anyone have anything in common anymore? And if they don't, then what is the point in having institutions that have any power? Institutions like, say, I don't know, hypothetically speaking, the IRS. If 50% of the country wants to wield arbitrary authority over the other half of the country at the explicit expense of that half of the country, we're just going to have to get rid of these institutions. We're going to have to get rid of these three-letter agencies. This would include the IRS, which the 50% betters, as it were, have granted themselves the authority to create the biggest increase of staff, personnel, and funds to an instrument of the federal government in my entire lifetime. And now some of the major duties include carrying a firearm and being willing to use deadly force if necessary. Applicants for the search agent position must also be, quote, willing and able to participate in arrests, execution, and search of warrants and other dangerous assessments. What's that? Did you forget to carry the 1 on your 1040 form? Well, I guess you should just get a bullet to your head because you're evil, which is insane. Absolutely insane. This, of course, the IRS has been used by the betters in society to arbitrarily target the lessers in society over and over and over again, and you can even hear it in their rhetoric. Now, Merrick Garland, on like August 11th, was that Friday? Was it Friday? Thursday. On Thursday, Merrick Garland cleared up all the foul air with the FBI raid, and he did so in the worst way possible. He essentially said, okay, so we've looked at our own actions in our own bubble, and in our own bubble, we've concluded that we've done nothing wrong, which is not an apology. And that's, of course, why everyone on this stream, I guess in particular, is reacting in this certain way. And then he was like, "Oh, you can't insult the FBI. Like the FBI is filled with like patriots or whatever." No, it's not. The FBI, the CIA, the IRS, these are all corrupt institutions, and it's why and they're, by the way, corrupt institutions wielded by corrupt people in order to engage in corrupt things for corrupt purposes. Don't give me this spiel about them being patriotic, but that's not the worst of it. There's this sludge head. I'm gonna call him that. I don't think he has a brain. I don't. Okay, am I accusing him of being a robot? No. I think he's a human without a brain. And he's like, "Oh, if you criticize Merrick Garland, did you know that the I can't believe he said this. He's like, Merrick Garland is a Jew, and if you insult him, you're insulting all Jews." Which no. Okay, and then he went to go on and where he essentially insinuated that the entire FBI is staffed by Jews, which no, it's not. Okay, but there are some people, not me, but some people who don't particularly like Jews. I find that sort of post-Hegelian dialectic materialism completely barbaric, but there are others who engage in that sort of post-Hegelian dialectic materialism where they're like, oh, well, we can use this as evidence to blah, blah, blah. And so you've created a scenario where people can just play this clip of ABC, a guest on ABC, saying that essentially that the security state is owned by Jews. You're creating your own problem here. That's what you're doing. You're creating your own problem, and that's sort of the theme of the FBI. They create their own problems, and then they find solutions for the problems that they cause. Oh no, the governor of Michigan, I think. Yeah, the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. She's about to be kidnapped. How do you know she's about to be kidnapped? Well, we have we've surrounded this insane lunatic with FBI agents to proselytize him into kidnapping the governor, and then he went out and did it, and then we arrested all of them and pardoned our agents, and then we gave ourselves a nice pat on the back. We gave ourselves such a nice pat on the back. You know, we really jacked ourselves off so much with this one, guys. It was a job well done. We did such a good job stopping this thing that we were responsible for. Oh man, such a good job. And they did the same thing for a few months later for the presidential inauguration. But anyway. Turns out the warrant violated the Fourth Amendment, according to Robert Barnes, an attorney. So I really hope Robert Barnes represents Trump. That'll be funny. The Trump warrant violated the overbreadth. I don't speak Old English, but doctrine of the Fourth Amendment requirement of particularly. The judge clearly rubber-stamped the warrant request. DOJ clearly failed their ethical obligations, and the FBI potentially violated Trump's constitutional rights. Illegal seizure. Ooh. I'm looking forward to that. that'll be great. That'll be great. Barnes, please represent Trump. That would be, oh, that'd be so great. But it turns out that, and this is according to Eric Trump, one of Trump's kids. They 30 agents who were there, by the way, ransacking Trump's castle. I'm not gonna call it home. Okay, it's a multiple story, several dozen bedroom thing. Okay, it's a castle. All right, so the FBI raided Trump's castle because presumably they're villains in a King Arthur story, I guess. I don't know. But so they raided Trump's castle, refused over and over and over again, multiple agents, to actually like show the warrant. And then they were like, okay, so turn the cameras off. And then everyone there was like, what? You heard me. Turn the cameras off. And even though this warrant was specifically for the seizure of alleged nuclear documents, which, by the way, Trump had, this is the stupidest thing ever. Okay, and here's why it's stupid. First off, it took them days to even say what the warrant was for, because they kind of fucked up, like, majorly. And then after doing it for days, it's like, oh, he had nukes. You heard that right. The security state reasoning for going after Trump was weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction. It worked so well the first time, and the second time, maybe third, maybe it'll work the third time. Well, the thing is, the American people have kind of gotten a bit sick and tired of, well, he had weapons of mass destruction, so we can just treat him however we want. He didn't have weapons of mass destruction. And by the way, for my future FBI arrest, I don't have weapons of mass destruction. I have no need for weapons of mass destruction to accomplish my goals, and I don't need them. Anyway, so Greg Abbott and Mayor Adams, all right, one of Texas, one of New York City. Mayor Adams, of course, leading the city with the betters, and Greg Abbott leading the state with the lessers. And essentially, Greg Abbott was like, well, you guys, all of my betters in the city want these people, and so all of my betters in the city can have them, because you clearly want them so much. You want them so much, and we know you want them. You go ahead and take them. And then Mayor Adams was like, this is an invasion at our borders. We can't handle these. It's too much. Oh man, it's way too much. This is, we can't take this. We need the federal government to step in and give us more resources and personnel, because we can't handle this ourselves. And it's like, and everyone in this situation is like, that sounds very familiar. Sounds very familiar. Do you believe it's not? No, what's happening essentially is the Democrats want their slaves again, but the difference is now they don't want to take responsibility or pay for the slaves. They want to import their slaves to the Republican areas that think slavery is bad, because that's how the Republican Party was founded, on the abolition of slavery. And so they're like, all right, so you can have our slaves, you can process and deal with our slaves here. And then once they're processed, they can go to all the various places, and they can and upset everything in all where you live, because you're the lessers and because we're the betters. And so they kept doing this, and people just kind of got sick of it. And this is a brilliant move. This is a fantastic troll, and keep doing it. They want to import a slave class into the country. I actually don't want to import a slave class into the country, but if it gets to a point where no one can stop it, the people who want the slaves can pay the bill. at the very least. I'd prefer no slaves being imported into my country. I'd prefer to remain as the best republic the world has ever known, the first country in the world, okay, to have a violent uprising against slavery. I'd prefer to be that country, but we are no longer the American Republic. We are the American Empire, and in the American Empire, there's a class of people who have their own ideological theories. Okay, we talked about CRT before. Now there's queer theory, and I refuse to read queer theory because it's gross. It's very disgusting. I touched the surface of it, and the assumptions of it on the surface are children are inherently sexual, which is a disgusting, like that's literally the mentality of a pedophile. And so, with the mentality of a pedophile, there's this man called Kinsey in the United States who was measuring the orgasms of babies. You heard that correctly, and that's why I don't want to look into it any further. I don't. And so all of the pedophiles, the betters in society, as it were, and you know that they're your better because they're always going on and on about how much better they are than you. Of course, they're not though, but they continue with this delusion. There's now a separate sect, as it were, the growing of the Grokkai class, as it were, gays against groomers. And I'm completely in favor of this. It's okay, because what happened was all of the institutions in the West were like, you can't insult, you can't call pedophiles using a queer theory with queer theory's stated purpose. You can't call them groomers. You can't do that because that's an affront to gay people. That's an affront to gay people. And then like there's 93,000. Well, actually, I'm not gay, but I follow them because they're an interesting group. So I'm going to assume that like half of their followers are gays against groomers. So I don't know, 46,500 who are like, nah, just because I'm gay doesn't mean I'm a pedophile. That's gonna get clipped. But look, point being, 46,500 people were like, yeah, this is kind of weird. Don't associate me with pedophiles. I'm not a pedophile, etc. And that's a pretty good move. And then a bunch of US pediatricians are like, look, there are a bunch of people who are who have the reins of power for our profession, and they're using the reins of power in our profession to abuse children. And this is an exclusive from the Daily Mail, just like how the one from Eric Trump was an exclusive for the Daily Mail. So I'll just give you the TLDR of this one real quickly. It's exactly as it is in the headline, but I highly recommend reading it because it is a good read. So yeah, just gonna end on a high note, as it were, or I guess it's kind of a high note. I guess it's a medium note. Twitter has decided, they've made the decision to essentially minority report their entire platform, and they're like, oh, the 2022 midterms are coming up, so we're gonna have this system to pre-ban people. The civic integrity policy covers the most common types of harmful, misleading information about elections and civic events, such as claims about how to participate in a civic process, like how to vote, misleading content intended to intimidate or dissuade people from participating in the election, and misleading claims intended to undermine public confidence in an election, including false information about the outcome of the election. Tweets with this content may be labeled with links to credible information or helpful context. Blah 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 blah. They've already determined, before the election has even happened, that anyone who has any problems with this is simply categorically incorrect, even before the information is out. So in other words, according to Twitter, there is a predetermined outcome of the election, and you're not allowed to be against it, which is not how elections work. That's how oligarchies work. Okay, and they're like, last year we tested misleading information labels and saw promising results. The new labels labels increased click-through by 17%, meaning more people were clicking labels to read it debunking content. So that we also saw noticeable decreases in engaging with tweets labeled with the new design, negative 13% in replies, negative 10% in retweets, and negative 15% in likes. Now, or sorry, minus, not negative. Now, here's what they've done right here. Okay, this is a sort of okay. As someone who's made a website, okay, the more people have to click things in order to get to something, the more likely they are to not get to the thing you want them to. So ideally, you want like maybe 1-2 clicks tops to actually get to something. You would want like 3, 4, 5, 6, or God forbid like 7, 8, and 9, etc. Which is why you can navigate to literally anything on my website in 3 clicks tops. Okay, but and it's like, oh, it's less than replies. They made it okay. Not granted, not by much, but when you make something more difficult, when you make content on the internet less accessible, the less people will engage with it. And they're doing the same thing the FBI did, where they actively make the world a worse place to live in, and then they pat themselves on the back and sniff their own farts while doing it. And it's like finding reliable information. Twitter wants to empower voters to find reliable information about how to register to vote. Basically, it just gets to a point where it's like, oh, the joke of election. This is an election day. Okay, my opponent, the election comes later on, et cetera, and you just kind of get to a point where, what is the point of being on Twitter? Well, you want to be on Twitter because that's where all of the betters are. But for me, I like to sort of attack my betters from the shadows. Okay, that's what I like to do. Okay, that's where I get my kicks. You know, that's the main content of the Trevor Report as a podcast. You know, I like to provide the ideological argumentation for things, and I like to archive the things that they do, couple it with the means of attacking them, and then attack them. Right? I don't want anything to do with Twitter. To this day, I will not make a Twitter account. I don't care. I don't care. Twitter has essentially become everything you don't want a church to be. Okay, they view themselves as the sacred arbiter of all conversation, so they can therefore direct and steer things in any way they want. And it's just awful. We don't need you. We don't want to. And at the end of the day, it would seem that they've just offset the sort of disinformation governance board that the Biden regime tried to make. They're making it again, and after apparently offsetting it to the private sector, they're also building it in the public sector. In a Wednesday memorandum published following an audit conducted by the Department of Homeland Security, DHS Inspector General, was a recommendation that the DHS fight online disinformation with a unified strategy following the collapse of the agency's now defunct Disinformation Governance Board. Fed Watchdog wants to find disinformation with a unified strategy after Disinfo Board collapsed. Look, it's time to make our own spaces, okay? It's time to create our own economies, okay? Our own sort of local economies, okay? And things of that nature. It's time for it. It's time for us to regroup, okay? For a World War I reference, it's time to regroup, build some trenches, okay? And yeah, so that's why I'm trying to do the work to put Acropolis News Network on Public Square. Now, Public Square is an app that sort of works like a Facebook Marketplace. And so except this is explicitly anti-woke, and it's anti-woke not by just simply being anti-woke, but by having its own principles. Okay, this as it were can be viewed as a way for consumers okay, to vote with their wallets and go to places and institutions that aren't treating them as second-class citizens for having, say, hypothetically speaking, the incorrect skin color, the incorrect politics, or any other form of beliefs. And it's time to do it. You know, I'm doing some things on the back end for my own website as well. I'm going to try to turn it from a simple news agency to a fully fledged multimedia empire, and I'm going to get into the music scene as the sort of second step for that. And we need to build our own cultural institutions. We need to build our own economic blocks, okay? Because at the end of the day, what we want is the American Republic. What our betters want is what we want is the American Republic, and what our betters want is the American Empire. And they can have their empire. They can have it. And then when the US dollar collapses or whatever, they can suffer in the cesspool that they created. Let's go do our own thing. It's time to stop being against all of these things and start promoting something. It's time to start being for something instead of against something. And that's why I'm also writing a book about it. I call it Stonework, because it's about laying the foundations in order to, I guess, create something new that can allow Gen Z in particular to craft something for ourselves and to stop being a weapon for our betters. And that's what I'm going to try to do. In the meantime, my name is Trevor Brown, and you've just watched the Trevor Reports. Do click the link tree down below in the description that I was forced to make because Linktree banned my Linktree for opposing black nationalism. So I made my new one, but because I don't like being a servant of my corporate overlords, I put the Linktree on my own website. So go ahead and click that one down below in the description to see where this podcast is and where to support me and where to read some of my academic work that I published myself. And I'll see you all in the next one. All of you brilliant viewers out there, my name is Trevor Brown. I am the editor-in-chief of Acropolis News Network because I can give myself whatever name and title I want because I own it. You could go to theacropolisnews.com, or you could go to This Just Trevor on whatever Liberty platform is your choice. You know, except for the ones I'm not on because I haven't seen them pretty much.
Acropolis News. News from the Acropolis.